What's going on, y'all? Welcome to the second installment of the One Mic with Big Mike video log, my vlog. I can't even believe I made it to two. I didn't think I was going to do one of these damn things, but, here we are. So, this weekend, the long awaited, little known story of the man that led the largest slave revolt in history will be told. That man's name, of course, is Nat Turner, and the man charged with telling the story is writer, director, producer, and actor Nate Parker. Now, it's controversial as Nate's movie may be for some. His personal past has proven just as controversial and polarizing. So, over the last few months, the terms Nate Parker, rape, sexual assault, all together have crossed my face and in a lot of different forms, but I never really stopped to pay it that much attention. In fact, my intention was to do exactly what I inevitably did. I ignored the social media noise and the media spin, and I waited till I was ready to sit and digest every detail of the situation for myself. Now, Sunday evening happened to be that day. After the afternoon NFL games and before the Sunday night game, I saw a 60 Minutes piece on Nate Parker. During the piece, one of the topics that was discussed was a sexual assault allegation that was brought against he and his friend, Jean, it's spelled Jean, Celestine, by a female while they all attended Penn State University. Yeah, that same Penn State University. Now, after watching the interview, I had a million questions, so I just started to look for as many details on the case as I could find. I read testimony, transcripts from recorded phone calls, investigator interviews, etc., etc., etc. I tried to read as much as I possibly could. And after all that reading, the one prevalent thought I had was, how could anyone be definitive when it comes to guilt or not in such a convoluted situation? The other thought I had was, why now? I mean, Nate Parker, he ain't some guy who just, came out of the blue. This is a guy who did the debate movie. He did the movie about the Tuskegee Airmen. He's done a few things before now. So I said to myself, why? And then, I kind of tried to answer my question a little bit, my own question, saying maybe it's because of the involvement of the other party that was accused of this crime with him in this particular project. His homie, Jean, he's actually a co-writer of The Birth of a Nation with Nate Parker. So I said, well, maybe that kind of, has something to do with the revelation of this sexual assault allegation, as well as the fact that, let's be frank, the young lady since that time she's committed suicide and she's taken her own life, which could obviously, you can see where that could spark some outrage from the people in her life and her family members. As I was reading, I got into the trial, right? And at the trial, Parker and Celestine were co-defendants. Parker was found not guilty on all charges, but his co-defendant was found guilty of sexual assault. And of course, this led people to run to their separate corners. Some people saying, how could one guy be guilty but not the other? Because the situation that we're talking about was two guys involved in the same room having sex either at the same time or in very close proximity as far as time goes with the same woman. And on the other side of the ledger, I could see where people would say, well, then how could one not be guilty or be not guilty and not the other? You see, so it's so weird, and I don't know that I could, based on what I read, and trust me, I read everything, come to a conclusion as to whether I could definitively say, well, this guy needs to be in jail or these guys need to be in jail. They definitely did this wrong, and it's not that. Now, after doing all this reading, I had to put out some feelers and just, to see what other people who had been, some of the people who had been mentioning this to me over the last couple of months and what they had to say. And one of the comments that was made was that something happened. With all this, something happened. Now, again, that's something that's left up to the interpreter, the person who's reading or listening to the reports on this situation. But the problem is, I'm not convinced that just something is enough to label someone a rapist and to put someone in jail for that crime. This is not a situation where, some masked man jumps out of the shadows and attacks some lady while she's trying to put her house key into the lock. Like any rational person looks at that and can identify it as what it is, right? This is one of those things that have come up here, especially here as of late. These campus sexual assaults and these allegations, and the handling of these things on college campuses, and there are usually so many factors that allow for others to interpret the situation in a million different ways. And unfortunately, one of the most prevalent factors, as was in the case of Nate Parker and his roommate and this young lady, it was alcohol and drugs. Now, this is not me saying, well, if a girl gets drunk, she deserves to get raped. No, that would be idiotic and stupid. I'm speaking from the perspective of someone, if I were in a position to hear the case, if I were a jury member on a trial like this, and during the trial, no one involved could give a concise account of what happened because of the alcohol and or drug use. Someone saying, I don't know if this happened. I think I was raped. I'm not sure. These words, based on what I understand to be the burden of proof in a criminal case, is beyond a reasonable doubt. Well, if the people involved have doubt as to exactly what happened, if you're a jury member, you're screwed. And that seems to be one of the overriding issues in this situation. In the case of Parker and Celestine, the question of how intoxicated the accuser was became a matter of contention. Fair or unfair, her previous sexual encounters with Parker was also something that was discussed. And of course, the race thing came up because if you're not familiar with this case, the accuser, she's a white girl, and of course Nate Parker is a black man. He and John Castile, I think Castile is of Haitian descent. It's also a matter of the people conducting the investigation, especially on these little college campuses, Penn State, Florida State here recently. How willing are they to resist their allegiances to these universities, or to, in this case, even the athletic department, because Nate and his roommate were both wrestlers, and not allowing these affiliations to cause them to be biased in either direction. Either you hate the athletes, or you hate black people, or you love the university. Either way, it's just these implicit conflicts of interest. Now, by the time The Birth of a Nation hits theaters, it will be just over 17 years since Nate Parker and John Castile that particular encounter with the young lady in their apartment. It will also be around 6 years after that same young lady took her own life, leaving her family to assume that it was because of what happened in that Penn State, it wasn't a dorm room, that apartment in Parker and Castile's apartment. And then all that was, to subsequently follow. It's too much for me to go into now. Stuff like harassment and then people finding out who she was and taking umbrage, calling her a racist and things of that nature. You guys get the picture of what I'm saying. Now, her family is understandably upset that Parker and Celestine are being lauded and celebrated. Her sister was also upset about a scene in the movie where Nat Turner's wife is raped. In her eyes, that shows a lack of sensitivity from the two men who wrote the movie. Now, here's the thing about that, though. From a storyteller's point of view, I can understand Nate Parker's and his co-writers a feeling of responsibility to tell what they consider to be as much of the real story as possible. As we all know, rape was a very real thing in the time of slavery, and it was done for many a different reason. And when the movie comes out, we'll all get a chance whenever it is that we see it. If people decide that they're going to pay their money and go to the movie, or as some people have said to me that they rather wait and see when it comes out on cable or whatnot, and if they just happen to be sitting around, they'll watch it. We'll all see if the rape scene is pertinent to the story, or if it's like, oh my god, they just dropped a rape scene in, for what the hell's going on. What I can contend without even seeing the movie is that there's an assumption, or there is a belief that Nat Turner's spirituality and his belief that God told him to rise up is what sparked off this revolt. Now, we may find out that Nat saw his wife be raped and was like, I ain't having this shit no more. We got to do something. This ain't right. We may find that out. I'm not, like I said, I haven't, of course, seen the movie. I'm not privileged to those type of things, but it'll all, I guess, come out in the wash. Now, when the movie does come out, I feel like, and I think I heard Nate Parker say it last night, that it's going to put a lot of people in a lot of different mental spaces. There will be that perceived fear that the movie will spark some type of damn race riots, especially in the light of all the police brutality, the social injustices that we're seeing here lately. There'll also be that, not another slave movement, or not another slave movie movement from people, a lot of black people, that in this case may, in fact, some of them may make an exception, because this movie is not necessarily the portrayal of the typical, I guess, downtrodden, beaten and battered, subservient slave. Nat Turner, depending on whichever lens that you're looking through, can be looked upon as an American hero. Full disclosure, I do. I look at him as one, but here's the thing. It's still a slave movie. And spoiler alert, when it's all said and done, Nat Turner will still find himself on the wrong end of a noose. There's also a sound case to be made that maybe Nat Turner indirectly caused the deaths of a lot of black folks during his revolt. And I'm not talking about the soldiers who fought with him. I'm talking about the black people that were killed simply due to the paranoia or to show them what would happen if they tried into that Nat Turner type stuff. Now, if I go as far as to like be stupid enough to directly blame Nat Turner for something that white oppressors did to their slaves, yeah, that would take me down a rabbit hole that no one can come back from. And I'm not as stupid as I may look. I'm not that stupid. But in present day terms, it's kind of like those auxiliary things that happen around what you mean to be a valiant mission, like dropping a drone bomb on the top terrorist on the terrorist watch list, but he happens to be near a school or whatnot, and kids get killed. It's up to the people doing these things to justify the end versus the means or whatnot. Now, I myself, I'm not in that group of not another slave movie. I see the value in telling these stories from all different perspectives. And lots of black people become upset at the notion that white America wants us to get over slavery. But a lot of these same black folks want to muzzle the telling of these stories because of their own personal discomforts. They'd rather see black superheroes displaying some sort of unrealistic show of strength and power. Look here, man. In my eyes, those characters and those slave depictions, Kunta Kinte, Solomon Northup, Cinque from Amistad, etc., they shouldn't be looked upon. Them or any of the unnamed black people, Africans from that time, they shouldn't be looked upon as victims, just as victims of kidnappings, assaults, and an oppressive system that tried, and in some cases even succeeded, in stripping them of all that they were before. They and all that they endured, and everybody that endured that shitty treatment should be looked at as heroes and heroines with the same strength that you think is being depicted in some fictional superhero that happens to have the same color skin as you. Look, in the end, see the movie, don't see the movie. For whatever reason you may have, but the reality is this. So many people, men and women, sit and watch on end every weekend pro and college football games. And they appear to care less about what those players have been accused of doing to women, as long as that accused sexual assaulter or that accused woman beater is helping your team. There doesn't seem to be a need for a moral stand in that situation. So again, my question as it pertains to the birth of a nation is why now and why this movie? Feel free to leave your comments. I look forward to reading them. Don't forget to tune in to the One Mic with Big Mike show every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on Spreaker.com at 7 p.m. Eastern. Thank you.